about the Book of Enoch, also known as Ethiopian Enoch. The Book of Enoch, also known as 1 Enoch, was once cherished by Jews and Christians alike. This book later fell into disfavor with powerful theologians, precisely because of its controversial statements on the nature and deeds of the fallen angels. The Enochian writings, in addition to many other writings that were excluded or lost from the Bible, i.e., the Book of Tobit, Esdras, etc., were widely recognized by many of the early church fathers as apocryphal writings. The term apocrypha is derived from the Greek word meaning hidden or secret. Originally, the import of the term may have been complimentary in that the term was applied to sacred books whose contents were too exalted to be made available to the general public. In Dan 12:9-10 we hear words that are shut up until the end of time, and words that the wise shall understand, and the wicked shall not. In addition, for Ezra 14:44 FF mentions 94 books, of which 24, the OT, were to be published and 70 were to be delivered only to the wise among the people. Gradually, the term apocrypha took on a pejorative connotation, for the orthodoxy of these hidden books was often questionable. Origen, Common Mat, 10.18 p. 13.881 distinguished between books that were to be read in public worship and apocryphal books, because these secret books were often preserved for use. Within the esoteric circles of the divinely knit believers, many of the critically spirited or unenlightened church fathers found themselves outside the realm of understanding, and therefore came to apply the term apocryphal to what they claimed to be heretical works which were forbidden to be read. In Protestant parlance, the Apocrypha designate 15 works, all but one of which are Jewish in origin and found in the Septuagint. Parts of 2 Esdras are Christian and Latin in origin, although some of them were composed in Palestine in Aramaic or Hebrew. They were not accepted into the Jewish canon formed late in the 2nd century AD canonicity, 67:31-35. The Reformers, influenced by the Jewish canon of the Old Testament, did not consider these books on a par with the rest of the scriptures. Thus the custom arose of making the Apocrypha a separate section in the Protestant Bible, or sometimes even of omitting them entirely. Canonicity 67:44-46. The Catholic view, expressed as a doctrine of faith at the Council of Trent, is that 12 of these 15 works, in a different enumeration, however, are canonical scripture. They are called the deuterocanonical books, canonicity 67:21, 42-43. The 3 books of the Protestant Apocrypha that are not accepted by Catholics are 1 to 2 Esdras and the Prayer of Manasseh. The theme of the Book of Enoch, dealing with the nature and deeds of the fallen angels, so infuriated the later church fathers that one, Philastrius, actually condemned it openly as heresy. Philastrius, Liber de Heresibus, number 108. Nor did the rabbis deign to give credence to the book's teaching about angels. Rabbi Simeon ben Jokai in the 2nd century AD pronounced a curse upon those who believed it, Delitzk, page 223. So the book was denounced, banned, cursed, no doubt burned and shredded, and last but not least lost and conveniently forgotten for 1,000 years. But with uncanny persistence, the Book of Enoch found its way back into circulation 2 centuries ago. In 1773, rumors of a surviving copy of the book drew Scottish explorer James Bruce to distant Ethiopia. True to hearsay, the Book of Enoch had been preserved by the Ethiopic Church, which put it right alongside the other books of the Bible. Bruce secured not 1, but 3 Ethiopic copies of the book and brought them back to Europe and Britain. When in 1821, Dr. Richard Lawrence, a Hebrew professor at Oxford, produced the first English translation of the work, the modern world gained its first glimpse of the forbidden mysteries of Enoch. Most scholars say that the present form of the story in the Book of Enoch was penned sometime during the 2nd century BC, and was popular for at least 500 years. The earliest Ethiopic text was apparently made from a Greek manuscript of the Book of Enoch, which itself was a copy of an earlier text. The original was apparently written in Semitic language, now thought to be Aramaic, though it was once believed to be post-Christian. The similarities of Christian terminology and teaching are striking. Recent discoveries of copies of the book among the Dead Sea Scrolls found at Qumran prove that the book was in existence before the time of Jesus Christ, but the date of the original writing, upon which the 2nd century BC Qumran copies were based, is shrouded in obscurity. It is, in a word, old. It has been largely the opinion of historians that the book does not really contain the authentic words of the ancient biblical patriarch Enoch, since he would have lived, based on chronologies in the book of Genesis, several thousand years earlier than the first known appearance of the book attributed to him. Although in the book he commands his son, Methuselah, to preserve the book unto future generations, which in itself is a call to copy the books he wrote, so they might not be lost to the ages, despite its unknown origins. Christians once accepted the words of this book of Enoch as authentic scripture, especially the part about the fallen angels and their prophesied judgment. In fact, many of the key concepts used by Jesus Christ himself seem directly connected to terms and ideas in the book of Enoch. Thus, it is hard to avoid the conclusion that Jesus had not only studied the book, but also respected it highly enough to adopt and elaborate on its specific descriptions of the coming kingdom and its theme of inevitable judgment descending upon the wicked, the term most often used in the Old Testament to describe the watchers. There is abundant proof that Christ approved of the book of Enoch. Over 100 phrases in the New Testament find precedence in the book of Enoch. Another remarkable bit of evidence for the early Christians' acceptance of the book of Enoch was for many years buried under the King James Bibles mistranslation of Luke 9, verse 35, describing the transfiguration of Christ. And there came a voice out of the cloud, saying, "This is my beloved Son, hear him." Apparently, the translator here wished to make this verse agree with a similar verse in Matthew and Mark. But Luke's verse in the original Greek reads, "This is my Son, the elect one," from the Greek hoekolegmenos, lit, "the elect one, hear him." The elect one is a most significant term found 14 times in the book of Enoch. If the book was indeed known to the apostles of Christ, with its abundant descriptions of the elect one who should sit upon the throne of glory, and the elect one who should dwell in the midst of them, then the great scriptural authenticity is accorded to the book of Enoch when the voice out of the cloud tells the apostles, "This is my Son, the elect one, the one promised." In the book of Enoch, the book of Jude tells us in verse 14 that Enoch, the seventh from Adam, prophesied. Jude also, in verse 15, makes a direct reference to book of Enoch 2:1, where he writes, "To execute judgment on all, to convict all who are ungodly." The time difference between Enoch and Jude is approximately 3,400 years. Therefore, Jude's reference to the Enoch's prophesies strongly leans toward the conclusion that these written prophesies were available to him at that time.